What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Property Pilot Podcast. I am Brian Graham, and this week's episode is Real Estate for Beginners. So we're going to begin talking about how to get started in real estate investing as a beginner. Now, I've covered previous podcasts like how you get started in real estate investing just in general, and I think that's for you may be considered a beginner, but this is for someone who's like almost virtually has no money. That's maybe like, how do I get started? Where do I begin? Like maybe saving for money, or what are the books to read? Rather than somebody who may be, 30, 40, 50 years old with a very steady job, steady paycheck, maybe has some income, not just income, but has a savings. Whereas, they may be getting, ready to get started next week. This podcast episode is going to be for those that are going to be starting in maybe a year, 2 years time, maybe even 6 months from now. So somewhere with some distance in between this episode and your first property. So I'm going to cover really like back to the basics. What do you need to know? What do you need to be ready for? So that way you can get started. And I'm going to point you in some directions of where you need to be looking for, more information, if not, other podcast episodes. So yeah, we'll just get started. Sorry, one sec here. Okay. So for someone, let's say this is that 18, 19, maybe even up to 21, 22-year-old, they just got their first job out of college, maybe even out of high school if you don't go to college. How do you get started in real estate investing? Well, from a knowledge perspective, I'll point you in the direction of a couple books. So when I got started, I would always tell people I was as knowledgeable as you could possibly be without actually having invested in real estate. I read How to Increase Your Financial IQ by Robert Kiyosaki. I read Tax-Free Wealth by Tom Wheelwright, The ABCs of Real Estate Investing, The Loopholes of Real Estate Investing, The ABCs of Property Management. I read that was 4 or 5 books from the Rich Dad series. I read The Real Book of Real Estate Investing by Robert Kiyosaki and his team. I read BRRRR. B-R-R-R-R. I read The Flipping Blueprint. I read a book on tax lien investing. So I would say I was pretty knowledgeable as it pertained to many different types of real estate investing and property management, taxes. So I knew how to structure things financially to give myself the best financial payout, not just from investing, but from, the tax benefits that come along with it. And all of those books do a very good job at surface level knowledge to teach you what questions to ask the professionals you're going to be trying to hire and what answers to look for. So for example, the Tax-Free Wealth book will teach you how to structure a business when you own one and why you would do that instead of having the property in your personal name. And then it tells you about what boxes you need to check in order to be considered a certain type of investor. Meaning, an example would be if, I'm Brian Graham and I work at Target and I'm making, $16 an hour. I don't even know what minimum wage is anymore, but let's say I'm making $16 to $20 an hour and I want to save up my first property. Well, if I am making, let's say, 32 grand a year, I'll just use the easy number, 40 grand a year. If I'm making $40,000 a year working at Target and I want to invest in my first property, and I buy it, and that property makes me $3 grand a year at a cash flow of, $250 a month. What happens to the excess amount of losses that property gets through depreciation and other tax benefits? If I buy that property and my losses are 4 grand, my income is 3 grand, I have an extra $1,000. Does that offset my target income? The answer is no, because your income from target income is called earned income. the income from real estate would be considered passive income. Once you have enough properties, though, you would be considered what's called a real estate professional, and you would be able to argue to the IRS, I spend more time on my properties than I do at Target. The IRS says, okay, you can check that box. You're considered a real estate professional. And once you do that, now that extra $1,000 of deduction can offset that income that you earn from Target. And that is where the tax benefits really kick in. I would never have known that had I not read the book. No one ever told me that. My CPAs never told me that. No one ever told me that until I read the book. That way, when I was speaking to my CPA, I would tell them, how do I qualify as a real estate professional? And then when they would further explain the book's concept, then I would say, okay, now I know what I need to do. And next year I need to shoot for 3 properties. That way I can, be able to take that deduction, those extra deductions. So it's very important that you understand the basic surface level knowledge. And that's what the books really do a good job of teaching you. The ABCs of Property Management was another really, really good book. I think it was by Ken McElroy. And he is one of the, Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad advisors of property management. And he does a great job explaining some of the questions you need to be asking and gives you a surface level knowledge about what you need to be looking for in your property manager or your own when you manage properties by yourself. When I read that book, I had no intention I was going to manage my own properties. Absolutely zero intention. I wanted to buy real estate, pay somebody 6 to 10% to manage my properties, and I was going to be 100% hands off. Someone would only contact me if something was going wrong in the property. Well, lo and behold, the more properties I accumulated, the more hands-on I would have to be. And I'm now hands-on with the property manager, and it doesn't make sense. The property managers have become what seems like more neglectful. With one property, the chances that something go wrong are slim, but now that I have 8 and then 17 units, the chances something's going wrong or needs tending to is actually pretty high. The property manager should be able to deal with these things. That's their job, but they're not. And I'm having to deal with them. And if I have to deal with them and my property manager's not, they become irrelevant. And so that's the position I'm in now, is I'm having to manage my own properties. But because I read that book, I now have that surface level knowledge. And now I can go gain that, person to person, hands-on experience of how to manage these properties and these units. So I highly recommend you read those books that can give you extraordinary extraordinary surface level knowledge of real estate investing before actually having to do it and, risk that money up front. But when you, like anything, they say luck is when preparation meets opportunity. Well, when someone has a good investment, that may or may not be good luck, right? It may be the amount of preparation and knowledge that you've gained through reading these books and watching YouTube videos and listening to podcasts like this one that helps give you the confidence to say, okay, I can buy that $100,000 property with 20%. Here we go. Here's 20 grand. Let's go do it, because you are as smart as you can be without actually having invested. It's when people just go, wow, they watch a YouTube video or listen to a single podcast episode and they say, oh, wow, that's amazing. I can do that. Then they go boom and buy the property, and then they have no idea what the hell they're doing. All right, so we'll get started. We're going to approach investing from the beginning as if you are, again, ages 18 to 21, either right out of high school, right out of college. How do you prepare to invest in real estate? Because you and your friends have been talking, you've been watching videos online. How do you prepare? How do you invest in real estate? Well, here you go. Income history. This is approaching real estate investing from a very, very basic perspective. I'm not going to get into the different strategies or anything. This single strategy is I'm buying a rental property with 20% down. That's it. This is as basic as you can possibly get. So the first thing you're going to need is income history, because when you go to a bank, the bank is going to have you apply. The first thing they're going to ask for is, what is your income? They want to see steady income. I would recommend, if you want to get invested quickly, if you're a person that's very motivated and you read these books, listen to these podcast episodes, and you're very, very motivated, you get through them all in a month, I would recommend that you have a job. You are an employee. You have income history of 30 to 60-day pay stubs, because when you apply for a mortgage, that's what they're going to want to see. Pay stubs that you have steady income. If you are a person that doesn't want to work for people and you want to have your own job, your own business, because that's part of the reason you're getting into real estate. Well, when you go get debt from a mortgage company, if you have your own business, they're going to need to see 2 years of income history. So let's use a basic, job or business that you would do growing up, like mowing lawns. It's very possible that when you're 18 years old, you just say, you know what, I'm not going to college. I'm starting my own lawn mowing business. And now you've got, let's say 10, 15, 20, 30 lawns that you mow every year, between the months, depending on where you are in the country, but between the months of April and October. Um, that could be a significant business. Let's say you start to build that up. Well, in high school, you probably aren't reporting that to the IRS. You're probably keeping that cash in your pocket, right? Well, when you go to a mortgage company, you may have made 10, 20, $30,000 a year, but the mortgage company needs to see proof of that. And if you don't have proof of that, the mortgage company cannot qualify you. And that proof is from your tax returns. And so now, if you do have that lawn mowing business and you want to continue to work for yourself, you've got to wait until you have 2 years of tax returns, 2 years of income history. So that way they can say, okay, we see that your business is steady. So that way when we lend this money to you to purchase that mortgage, you're not just going to say, screw it, and your business dies because you can't afford the debt. That's why they need income history. So I highly recommend that if you're interested in starting your own business, you start it as early as possible if you're willing to grind like that. But so that way you can get that income history. But if you're interested in buying real estate very quickly, get a job, have those 60 days pay stubs, because you can, qualify for that income very quickly. The next thing you're going to need outside of income history is you're going to need a real estate agent, and you're going to need to find the market that you want to invest in. So obviously, if you're working at Target and you're making 30 to 40 grand a year, finding a property in LA ain't going to cut it. That property is going to go for $500 to $10 million. You can't, 500 grand to $10 million. You can't afford that at $40,000 a year. So you need to find a market and the type of property that you can cash flow. So if you find a property for $100,000, you're going to need 20%. So $20,000. Some mortgage companies may let you have 15% down. So $15,000 to $20,000 to buy a property. But again, if you're making 40 grand and another $10,000 goes to the IRS because of taxes, you only have $30,000 a year. If you have to pay rent for living somewhere, or you have to, even just basic living expenses, you have a car payment, whatever that is, it may take you two years to save up anyway. Unless you have money that someone else is willing to give you, based on an investment of $20,000. If you have 10 grand, you may have a buddy or a parent that may be willing to invest the other 10. So that way you can buy that $100,000 property. So you're finding the market that you're interested in with the price tag of a home that is close enough to your income. So that way you can get started. And then you want to look at, is that property going to cash flow? So if I buy a property for $100,000 with 20% down, I'm looking at the 1% rule. That means that property needs to rent for at least $1,000 a month for me to cash flow cleanly and not be in the hole every month. The interest rate is going to dictate a lot of that. So at $100,000 property with which is an $80,000 mortgage at a 6% interest rate, you're looking at a $450 to $500 mortgage payment with principal and interest. If the property is rented for $800, well, once you include taxes and insurance, you're hardly going to make any money. Maybe $100 a month at a $20,000 investment, you're looking at not even a 10% return, which means the first thing that goes wrong in the property, and now you're in the hole for the whole year. It's a year's cash flow. So, which would be $100 a month of positive cash flow times 12 is $1,200. If a hot water heater goes out that costs $1,200, well, there you go. There's your year's cash flow. Now, some people may argue breaking even is better than not investing at all, because then you have equity pay down that's still happening from the person, and you still have tax benefits, and you still have appreciation value on the property. And I would say, yes, that is true. However, that comes down to one of the next things we're going to talk about, which is what are your goals of investing? The goal in investing for me is to increase my cash flow, my monthly income, so that way I can retire from my personal job. And by retire, I don't mean I'm probably going to quit, but I want to mean I don't want to be locked down to my 9 to 5 job because I absolutely have to. I want the freedom. And that's the point of, I think, real estate investing and owning your own business in general, is the freedom to do whatever you want, whenever you want, without having to go to work. And so I think that's, once you determine your goal, that'll determine whether or not cash flowing on that property or not is worth it. For me, breaking even every month is not worth it. I want to increase my monthly income so that way I can have the freedom to take a vacation or go play soccer whenever I want, or go play pickleball whenever I want. And to the point where maybe even my income's high enough, I can take my whole family on a vacation. So the goal is extremely important, and the market will help, drive that goal. One of the next things we talk about is the type of investing. So the type of investing I'm talking about here is just a typical long-term rental property. There's other types of investing like wholesaling and flipping and BRRRR method and, all the different other strategies, but I'm strictly talking about buying a rental property for long-term and holding that property. So determine what your type of investing and then the goal of that investment is, and that will help you dictate, the market that you enter in and the type of risk you're willing to have. And then the next thing you need to consider is the real estate team. So everything I'm talking about are different things you need to be thinking about to get started in real estate investing. Well, your team is a major part of that. I already mentioned the real estate agent, but another person is your real estate lawyer. And I have another podcast episode talking completely about the real estate team that you're going to need. And that's in the first 5 episodes. You can check that on the list on Spotify. So you're going to need your real estate team. The real estate team includes a real estate agent. You're going to have your real estate lawyer. This is someone you're going to go to for most likely your title company. You may have an eviction attorney as well, someone that's right there. Your property manager, unless you want to do it yourself. You're going to need an insurance agent, and you're going to need a mortgage lender. And a mortgage lender varies. You can go to a Wells Fargo, which means the person you're going to be speaking to may or may not be the same person, depending on where you buy, because that individual may not be licensed in every state. The company might be licensed in every state, which means they have officers they can send you to. But there may be somebody who is licensed in every state, which, as someone I've worked with at a bank called Civista Bank, this person could do a loan anywhere. And so I would talk directly to that person every time. Now, there are companies where you have to talk to a different person, but a mortgage lender is going to be one of those other people. And it helps if you can use the same lender. I would recommend you find the lender that really benefits what your goal is. So, for example, if I'm looking for high cash flow, I want the mortgage company that gives me the best interest rates. And so if I can have the best interest rates, that increases my cash flow for 30-year terms. That is, I'm usually always doing 30-year terms. So if I find a mortgage lender that gives me the best interest rates and I consistently am using that person, and occasionally I'll shop around to other places just to see if there's any better rates I can get. But if that person has all my information on file, every single time I apply to a mortgage company for a mortgage, they'll have that information on file where I don't have to keep applying to different companies. Because I've been investing for, 5+ years, almost in my 6th year, almost finished my 6th year. When a mortgage company asks for my information, it'll probably take me an hour and a half to send them all the documentation and get through that application process. That's a long time. When I first got started, it probably happened in 30 minutes, if that, sending them that documentation. But now I have to send them mortgage statements. I have to send them tax bills. I have to send them not W-2s, because I own my own business. I have to send them tax returns. I have to send them the paychecks I write myself. I mean, it is a laundry list of things, and that is just annoying. But when I work with the same lender, they have all my information on file, and I just tell them like, hey, you still got my information? And they say yes. And then it's like, boom, let's use it. And if they say, we just need your updated bank statements, I'm like, okay, done, here you go. And it saves me tons of time. So developing a relationship with that single lender is huge to saving you time in the long term. So Again, I hope this podcast episode was helpful on how to get started in real estate investing. If you are a person that's just coming out of high school or college, some things you need to line up, set some dominoes in effect, so that way you can, push down the first one and get started as quickly as possible, but definitely as smart as possible. So I wish you guys all the best, and thank you for listening. I will see you next week. The advice and recommendations I offer are intended to be informative and educational, drawing from my own experiences in the real estate market. It is crucial to recognize that every investment decision carries risk and outcomes may vary. I am not a financial advisor, and the information provided during these podcast episodes is not intended as financial, legal, or professional advice. It is your responsibility to conduct thorough due diligence, seek the advice of qualified financial professionals, and make informed decisions based on your individual financial situation and goals.